What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of First Date Unsolved. Today's case was actually one that was requested to me by someone who knows the victim. In this episode, we will be talking about Laurian Cuffy. Cuffy's case has actually been on my radar for some time because I knew his name and it was familiar. I just couldn't figure out how or why. It turns out that I attended middle school with Laurian, although we weren't even close to being in the same circles. I was one of those nerdy kids who was in Battle of the Books and band, and I ate lunch in the library with the librarian because I'm a loser. So I definitely flew under Cuffy's radar. Before we get into his case, though, I just want to mention a little something really quick for you guys. I think it's pretty cool. I graduated from the Launcher program back in 2021. Launcher is a series of small business classes offered in Dover and in Wilmington. They have teachers and speakers who are established small business owners, established entrepreneurs in the state. And, they teach you about owning a business, owning a small local business. You write up a business plan and you learn all about what it takes to have a business. They have people there who can help you get set up with financing, realtors, all kinds of stuff. It's really, really cool. If you are interested in maybe starting your own business, you should apply. The fee is only $100, but the benefits are pretty much endless. And there is a Facebook group for the alum that I'm a part of. And I reached out and asked if anyone would be interested in partnering with the podcast. I'm not going to get any commission out of this, so don't think that I did it for me. I'm just all about generating awareness and, all about local here. Go Delaware. But a few people reached out and let me know that their businesses would be interested in participating. So if you ever patron these establishments or, reach out to these businesses and request their services, you will get a small discount of some kind. I haven't ironed any specifics out with these individuals just because, like I said, I don't get anything out of it. But yes, these businesses have agreed to kind of work with you a little bit or give you a deal. If you reach out and say, hey, I heard about you on First Date Unsolved, let's do business, they're gonna hook you up. And the first business we have here is Poorhouse High Class Bartending. Poor as in P-O-U-R. The owner, Tamia, lists on her Facebook that Poorhouse Bartending is a full mobile bar on wheels, a perfect addition for brunch, kids' birthdays, or corporate events. We offer a hassle-free service. We handle the flow of your personalized cocktails and mocktails as you host. And they have a website, www.poorhousebartending.com. Again, poor as in P-O-U-R. I will link that in the description box for you guys if you ever want to go check her out. That sounds really cool for like a wedding. My wedding was at like a farm, so that would be a really cool addition to something like that. Like she mentioned, corporate events, maybe like, a party, a cookout, barbecue. Hey, I always get stuck making the cocktails at our get-togethers. That would be a nice addition to someone who has to be stuck behind the bar or who's slinging drinks all night. So check out Poorhouse High Class Bartending. Mention First Date Unsolved, and Tamia's gonna, hook you up. But getting back into it, if you try to look up Laurian's information online, you won't find anything other than a brief report of his murder. So I hadn't anticipated ever being able to cover him here, which is why I'm really glad that Mr. Kelly reached out to me. Mr. Kelly is married to the woman whom Laurian was dating at the time of his murder back in 2010. On March 24th, 2010, Cuffy was shot and killed in front of the residence he was sharing with his girlfriend, her mother, and his 18-month-old son with his girlfriend. Shortly after 11:30 that evening, Newcastle police were dispatched to the Garfield Park neighborhood in Newcastle regarding a shooting that just occurred. Upon arrival, The 21-year-old victim was found lying on the ground near his residence and was pronounced deceased at the scene. One thing that you won't read is that the mother of Cuffy's girlfriend is the one who found him outside, and she held him until authorities arrived. She covered his body, forbidding her daughter from seeing him because it was just too much for her to have to witness. You see, the shot that killed Laurian was a shotgun blast. I know very little about guns. I don't like guns. They scare me. I believe we should have the right to own them. I just don't like them personally. But I do know that shotgun shells release hundreds of tiny metal pellets when they are fired, which can cause extremely graphic damage to its target. So, as a mother, she did not want her daughter to see her significant other that way, and I don't blame her. We'll circle back to Laurian's son and girlfriend shortly, but I did have the pleasure of speaking with his mother, so I'd like to first go over what she had to say. Miss Cuffy and I had spoke for about an hour on the phone. As you can imagine, talking with family members of victims can be quite taxing based on the subject matter. Sometimes I end an interview and I just feel so heavy and so sad. But after this call, I felt a way that I can only describe as light. Miss Cuffy, first and foremost, is a very spiritual and godly woman. Our topics of discussion ranged from local parks, local restaurants, to crooked contractors, and social justice. But she always referred back to God sees all. No parent should ever have to bury their child, right? And Miss Cuffy did express to me that there are times when she experiences great sadness when she thinks about the death of her baby boy. The pain of losing her son will always be there, no matter how much time passes. But her faith in God and the power of God keeps her grounded. Laurian's mother also let me in on the fact that she feels some guilt looking back at his life. She wonders if there were things that she missed or if she could have done anything differently to alter her son's trajectory. Miss Cuffy was a single mother of 4 children. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a lot. She had 3 boys, Laurian being the youngest, and 1 girl. She also took on the responsibility of raising her sister's 2 children, bringing the total up to 6 kids under her care. 1 child is a lot for a single parent, but 6? Come on, 6? On top of having to look after half a dozen kids at home, Miss Cuffy often worked second or even third shift hours for the Delaware courts, which was a high-stress job at times. I say all of this because it turns out that Cuffy had ADHD. Honestly, who doesn't these days, right? He had this learning disability that was undiagnosed, and it was hard for his teachers to control him or handle him. Laurian was a very intelligent child. He was just bored or uninterested in school subjects, and therefore would cause disruptions. From what I gather, Cuffy wasn't on any medication because, again, he was undiagnosed, and that can make it nearly impossible for an adolescent with ADHD to learn or thrive in a traditional school environment. Miss Cuffy feels that maybe if she had a better support system, that maybe she would have been able to make different decisions or provide her son with some more attention. I tried to assure her that she did the best she could with what she had with her children. Hindsight isn't always 20/20, and we have absolutely no way of knowing what could have been. Laurian's mother also mentioned that her son liked to work with his hands. He could often be found tinkering around and putting things together or taking things apart, but when it came to reading instructions, he couldn't be bothered with that. Her son would rather figure things out for himself instead of sitting down and trying to read about how to do it from the manufacturers. She showed me what looked like a sculpture of the iconic comedy tragedy masks and said that he put it together when he was younger without even reading how to do it. As soon as I saw it, I instantly remembered those commercials in the late 90s for the 3D puzzles. I don't know if any of you guys remember those, but I specifically remember commercials. There was a King Tut puzzle, a Darth Vader puzzle, and elaborate buildings like the Notre Dame Cathedral or the Eiffel Tower. King Tut and the Notre Dame Theater specifically stand out in my mind. You have to remember those commercials. I think I even surprised her a little because I knew exactly what it was. And listen, those things look difficult, okay? They are intimidating. I don't have the patience for a regular puzzle, let alone something like that. So I personally was thoroughly impressed. We also got on the subject of how caring Cuffy was. He was a very caring person. One of the first things that come up once we began talking about Laurian was that he had a big heart. Miss Cuffy gave me one specific example, and I think this is perfect. It perfectly displays how compassionate he was, okay? Cuffy grew up in an area well known for sex work. Route 9 and Route 13 have seen their fair share of women walking up and down looking for dates, insert air quotes, dates, for as long as I can remember. Miss Cuffy remembers driving in the car with her son and making comments when she would see these women, and Cuffy would get upset with her every single time. He would say things like they're victims of society, they can't help it, and, they need help. In her mind, and in the mind of a lot of others, those individuals and individuals like them are a blemish to society and are just undesirable, right? It wasn't until many years later, while at a training seminar, that Miss Cuffy finally understood what her son had been trying to tell her all along. We've briefly touched on human trafficking before on the podcast, and blemishes or not, those women we tend to turn our noses up at are in fact victims in one way or another. While it's more likely that they are in the situations that they are in because of substance abuse, that is just the tip of the iceberg for some, and even at a young age, Laurian could pick up on that. He saw something in the people walking around Route 9 that not even his own mother could see at the time. Not only does that sound like words of a compassionate person, but a very wise person as well. Overall, Laurian was said to have been a happy child. He loved his siblings, he loved his mom, and he loved his family as a whole. Miss Cuffy even mentioned that her son was one of those people who are just naturally strong. One of those lucky people who could just pick up an armchair and hoist it up the stairs without getting winded. And that's actually a story she told me. That's not just some random example that I picked up. At one point during our call, Miss Cuffy showed me, because we were on a video call, she showed me the disastrous state that her kitchen was in after hiring a contractor who bit off more than he could chew. 8 months after he was paid, the room is just bare bones and empty with nothing but her refrigerator and a stove. There's no cabinets, there's no countertops, nothing. She seemed a little sad because she said to me that she knew things would be different if Laurian were here. That's not to say that her other children that she raised don't care. I just got the feeling that she was trying to say that if he had been here, if he had been around, he would have just taken on the project himself and she wouldn't have been in the predicament that she's in. And now is the time where we are going to get back to Laurian's son and his significant other at the time. As previously mentioned, Cuffy was living with his girlfriend, her mother, and his 18-month-old son. What he didn't know is that he had a second child on the way, and his girlfriend was just weeks pregnant, like brand new, early stages, like 4 weeks pregnant. I don't know if she knew that she was expecting at the time, but I was assured Laurian did not know. No one really knew, but Miss Cuffy shared with me the most beautiful story, and I'm so happy to share it with you all. One night after her son's death, she didn't specify as to how many days later or anything like that, but it was after he had passed, Miss Cuffy had the most vivid dream. She said that in her dream, Laurian appeared and was adamant that his girlfriend had to keep the baby. Quote, "Mom, call her. Tell her to keep the baby. You have to call her. You have to tell her to keep the baby." End quote. She said Laurian just kept repeating himself, and he was persistent. The first thing she did the next morning was to call the girlfriend. Miss Cuffy explained her dream and let the young woman know that she would be there to help every step of the way, and that she needed to keep the baby. On the other end of the line, the young woman began to cry. And that is how Miss Cuffy found out that she was going to be a grandmother again. Believe what you will, but I'm like emotional now just reading this and going over this again. I thought that was the most amazing thing. Like, bro, like, oh, that's so beautiful. I love that so much. It turns out the girlfriend had every intention of keeping her unborn child, but hearing about the dream and being reassured by Miss Cuffy was a very emotional moment, to say the least. 8 months later, Lauriana was born on November 20th, 3 days before her brother's birthday and 6 days before their father's birthday. That's right. Laurian and both of his children have November birthdays, all within 6 days of each other. And that may not seem like a significant fact to most, but when you have to grow up not knowing your father, subtle coincidences like that tend to have more meaning. And I'm not sure if you guys picked up on that, but Lauriana, she's named after her dad. Lauriana. That is such a pretty name. I guess this is why, like I said, after this conversation, I felt so light. Like this, I'm getting chills now. Like this is just, it's such a beautiful story. It's such a sad situation, but oh man. Now 15 and 13, Cuffy's children have had to go their whole lives learning about him through stories and photos shared by family. And while they may not have had their biological father present during their most formative years, they do have a dad present, and he loves them like they are his own flesh and blood. When Mr. Kelly wrote to me, he didn't call Laurian's kids his stepchildren. He addressed them as his oldest son and his daughter. I'm going to read to you part of the message that he sent me. My daughter wants to know everything about him, and I think this would be a great way to highlight him for them and the family. Since fall 2010, I have used my experience as an educator and an art trauma therapist to continue healing with the family. We cry often. Oh man, this is so hard for me to read. It is because of his light that my family shines. These are Mr. Kelly's words. This is what he's saying about Laurian. It is because of his light that my family shines. Laurian was his mother's baby boy, his brother's baby brother, and was only 21 years young. Although he had dealt with a lot of problems early on, as an adult, his life should have not been taken. My children deserve his presence. My children deserve his presence. That's powerful. Ooh. The way that has traumatized them is beyond words. March 24th marked 14 years since he was murdered. 14 years, guys. 14 years with not even an inkling as to who took this young man away from his family, according to his mom. Miss Cuffy did share with me that her son smoked a little bit of marijuana from time to time, and she did mention that he may have sold it as well. But look at our society now, right? There are dispensaries all over Jersey. It's legal here medically and recreationally in Delaware. It's everywhere, right? I only mention that because this detail is likely... I only mention this detail because it's likely that this line of work had something to do with his murder, in my opinion. But police have never named any persons of interest, and they have looked into this case at some point in time, but no one has ever contacted Miss Cuffy for any updates. Her guess, my guess, your guess is as good as any because she has no idea who killed her son. No clue. Nothing, no updates at all. And she used to work for the court system. She shared, her thoughts are that society looks at victims in a different light based on circumstances. Those circumstances determine how hard they, meaning police, will work to solve a case. She, again, worked with the courts. She knows there are police who really work hard, really dedicated to their job. She also knows that just like any place of employment, there are people who just like coast by. And, this is all just very unfortunate because Laurian left behind 2 children, left behind his mother, brothers, a sister. He left behind a lot, and it's not fair to them that there's no justice. There's no information at all. It's just very unfortunate that situations like this happen. It's sad. It's a lot. But I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about Laurian. I hope I did his story justice. I hope that his family and his children enjoy this. I hope, I hope it did a good job. And thanks guys for listening. Remember, if you thought nothing ever happened here, that's not the case. You thought wrong. And please be careful out there. Go check out the poorhouse. Keep listening. Catch you next time.